A lot for coming out this morning. Our first presenter today is Howie Schwartz. Howie is the lead guide and owner of Sierra Mountain Guides, and a longtime avalanche educator and a big role model for a lot of us here in the community. So thanks, and we'll welcome Howie.
Well, I'm still alive. I am fully immunized and vaccinated. Thanks for coming, you guys. Fundraiser. I haven't heard how we did last night, but I think it's looking pretty good. Good attendance and great energy out there. It's such a great way to connect with our getting up on a beautiful Saturday fall morning. And I know there's no snow to ski, so you had probably nothing better. Figure out how to do this. I'm going to share my screen, I guess. Death taxes. Hey, everybody. You can't even read my lips. Okay, and then also I'm on the board and I'm one of the founding board members of the Eastern Sierra Avalanche Center. So it's been my passion to share avalanche education and avalanche safety with our community for a long time, and I maintain that today. And I'm also an instructor for the American Mountain Guides Association. I've been doing that for over 20 years as well. So I hope that I have something to offer you. Oh, another thing that I've been doing lately, it started last year, writing for Powder Cloud. If you haven't checked out the website Powder Cloud, there's some great avalanche education resources and other just backcountry resources there. The other one. Speak up and listen, and there's going to be a couple coming up very soon that'll be released, and then a few more this season, I think. So check that out. I love to be in the backcountry. I love to ski. It's my passion. And I love where ski guiding has taken me over the years. I love the people that I've been able to interact with. They're always amazing, motivated, and successful people that tend to hire guides. to teach and take them places. And this is my family. We're a backcountry ski family. This is my wife, Karen, and my son, Cosmo. I love having them in my life. So I want to grow up to be an old guide, just like this 84-year-old skier. And ski down. And like this person who hired me on first descents, she was 70 cents in Alaska together, in a really remote place. That's Louise. So I hope to be like them one day. Thing different, even some East Coast, but really the Mountain West was at a pretty dangerous level for a while, and a lot of people were getting out in it. There's actually 26 deaths in a 23-day period between January 30th and February 22nd. And we weren't immune from it here in the Eastern Sierra. On the beginning of that period, Nate Greenberg, president of ESAC and my good friend, he almost became one of those statistics when he triggered this avalanche in the Sherwins, just our friendly backyard, Mammoth Hills. How many people here went to the event that ESAC put on where we did a debrief of that publicly? Anybody? Yeah, a couple of you. Well, check it out. You can still go and check out the details, but he basically triggered an avalanche right here. And you can see how low the snow cover is and how many obstacles that were out, but right where this circle is where he managed to self-arrest. And most of that snow went by him, and as it did, he got injured pretty badly, but still able to actually self-evac with his team, but it took them quite a long time. This is a picture of the crown fracture above where he triggered the avalanche and the ride that he took. Imagining yourself having been in that avalanche, you may develop your sense of what the consequence will be before the avalanche happens, because then out website where there's an archive of all of these things. I assume maybe this talk will be there at some point so you could reference it. But yeah, it was just an amazing thing that this group of people, Nate and his partners, all did, generated, this educational event where had it been a fatality, we probably wouldn't have been able to have access to that. But because it was a near miss, and we have people that are so enthusiastic about avalanche education and they don't want to see those kind of accidents happen to their friends and peers, that they donated their time to do this. So check it out. It's a couple hours long. And we went out to the site a week later when it was safe to do so, where we did an avalanche awareness session with a couple guests, and they experienced what it may have been like to probe and dig and try to rescue somebody in that terrain, in that kind of compacted debris. Okay, so the next day after that avalanche happened to Nate, this is what I did.
Thing ever. I know. Look at that line too, and it went fast.
So, like, just told you, my son is like my most prized possession, you know? So how do you reconcile those things? I mean, the truth is, what we're doing out there has risk. And that, would I have? No, but see, in different places at different times. And what we're trying to do is figure out not exactly where an avalanche is going to happen when, because that's almost impossible. You can, you know, unless it's really, really hazardous, you can be like, oh, I'm 99% chance that we're going to trigger an avalanche here. And sure enough, you do. But really, it's about doing everything you can not to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. And as it turns out, there's not that many times during the season that you can't go to a certain piece of terrain. Like if you randomly picked a terrain just on a random day and just went for it, you know, they say maybe that's just like a 1 in 10 chance, just a random roll of the dice. And it could be even less than that. It's just the problem is where we want to go is also right where the best snow is, and the avalanches tend to want to happen. The best snow, the best terrain. And so that humps you see are the bushes. And so I knew there wasn't enough snowpack to slide over top of those bushes. And I knew that my skis were very light and they could stay above the bushes. We actually all managed to do a really strong mid-pack in there. We actually made some really good turns that day. So sometimes by being creative, you can avoid the places like where Nate was. There. In fact, Benjamin Franklin said, and this is like the title of the presentation here, in this world, nothing can be said to be certain except death and taxes. There's a particular brand of death that we could all face. And if you do this long enough, you'll start to know people that have met that end, that have succumbed to that type of death, and prematurely in general. So we need to protect. And what's the consequence if that avalanche happens? So to be able to establish what will the consequence be, it's an exercise of imagination. How big is the avalanche? How wide could it propagate in this terrain? How would it fall and flow in the terrain? How fast would I go? What would I hit? And starting to be able to visualize the consequence. But are you ever sure of what that consequence will be? No, you don't know if you're going to get buried. You don't know what you're going to hit with your head. There's all kinds of unknowns that so in other words, the consequence is never truly knowable. You can just kind of get a range of maybe potential consequences. Likelihood is a little more mysterious still. What's the likelihood of me stepping onto that slope and triggering an avalanche that could cause me harm? Well, that's something that you might never be able to know. Like I said, if it's high danger, you might know it. But it's really, where do people get caught in avalanches and killed? In moderate to considerable danger. Which is the state, even a partial state, information related to the understanding or knowledge of an event, its consequence, or its likelihood. And just to give had a little teaser in October. Don't worry, it could get better. But this was that year where it didn't snow till late January, and this is Tenaya Lake up in Tuolumne where the road was still open and we were ice skating. Well, our first time going out, this is my wife with my son in a stroller skating around. And we actually had the wrong gear the first time we did this, which was at Rock Creek Lake. We put the skis instead of the wheels. We later figured out that the wheels were better than the skis, for those of you with little babies and strollers and stuff. But we pulled up to the lake, and we never, I just bought ice skates, used skates, and we all did. And so we're like, I'm about to roll my infant son onto this frozen lake, and it's making all these cracking noises, and like you can hear the water underneath. And I'm just like, you take an ice screw, I got plenty of those, and I put it in there, and I'm like, well, it's like 3 or 4 inches thick here. Does that mean it's okay? I'm looking for a rule of thumb. Maybe if I just make a measurement, then I'll know, right? I'm still kind of uncertain, and I've got a lot of consequence on the line. I've got an infant son right on the ice. And I know people die this way. So he's skating. There's no one around. It's all quiet. Let's just, be conservative here. Just as I said that, sticks like started laughing, and they came from a different entry, and I saw them all playing. I just looked back at my wife and strolled right up onto the. So, I mean, I can really relate. I ended up having a conversation with the forecaster who I ran into that day. I'm like, check out what I just did. Because how common is that in avalanche terrain where you're just like, oh, I'm not sure, I'm just going to be conservative. But then you see someone else ski the slope and they're like, woo! And you're like, oh yeah, now it feels fine. But nothing's really changed, right? So this was like, I realized after that I should probably learn a little bit more, right? Get more ice awareness, ice hazard awareness, like you're getting avalanche awareness. And one thing I did is I saw this nice video about how to deal with ice. And if you go forward, it might be weaker ice, and then you just keep breaking it. So now I'm starting to give myself like a rescue protocol, just like we do in avalanche training. Like, oh, I got my beacon. First thing I do is I stop and I check the scene for safety, and you come up with your avalanche rescue protocol. And I'm learning my protocol. Oh, okay. And then what you want to do is you want to take some kind of sharp objects and pull and stab them into the ice. Oh yeah, you want to relax. Don't forget to relax. And then you want to stab those in, and then don't try to just pull yourself out. Just try and like get horizontal, and then pull yourself and crawl carefully onto the ice and try and self-rescue yourself, because you don't want to bring other people in and have them get hurt and fall in. So like I'm learning about all this stuff now, and I'm wondering, does knowing this help me, or does it actually cause me to now be more willing to go onto the ice, right? You ever have that feeling like, oh, now I know how to rescue somebody in case they get buried, but did you really you're going to be? Can you do it 15 minutes? Your chance of survival plummets in an avalanche. So anyway, I could relate in the ice. But we've learned about it over the years, and now we tend to go out on seasons like this and find thick frozen ice that feels safe, and we play hockey ourselves. And an interesting story about a backcountry ski day that I had at I looked at the ice, and it was a nice cold morning, but this is in April. So there was some open holes, but there was pretty thick. And when you got skis on your feet, they really spreads the load out. And so I just started and made it, I just turned around if I didn't like the ice, and just finding these thick patches. It's like kind of early morning. And when the other people, there was like 5 or 6 more people on the trail, they saw me do that, they all descended to the lake, and they kept calling me the guy. They're like, follow the guy, follow the guy. They're like, okay, and they come back. We made over beach over here, and we were going to head for some up here that a friend of mine he'd get out from the air. He's a pilot, and he wanted to go do. So I was like, oh yeah, well, I'd never go up there. It's kind of irritating to get up there. So we did. And as I got to the other shore, I said, well, we're not going to do that in the afternoon, because it was like, thin enough that this could be pretty scary when the heat of the day and an April day comes out, and some of these thin areas are going to probably open up. And so anyway, we had this day. There was some veteran skiers in the and he was kind of like a hot free skier in the Aspen area. Climbing couloir. I think Christian Pondella, if you know him, he's one. This is where us old people stop. Earlier in the and the wind effects it was just more and more exposed blue water ice, and we're like, this is where the old people are going to stop. And the young kids kept going. They're like, well, we want to go to the top, so like, okay, well, do what you want. And so they went up to the top, and we all skied down from there. They didn't go much higher. And this is kind of you can kind of hear the ice underneath, so I wanted to just show. So then me and the 20-year-old kid, he ended up going with me up this other couloir, and some of the other, we kind of split the group into 2. And I said, yeah, I'll go up there with you. And then again, the same thing happened. We got up to a point where like, all right, it's all ice from here. I'm just going to stop here. And he's like, well, I'm just going to go a little further to where, I'm like, okay, if you want to, go ahead. You can kind of see him coming. Probably, he may have learned over time too that like when in doubt, just go for it and it works out. Right? That kind of rhymes. But a couple of hours later, we made it down, and I'm with Christian Pondella, and we're looking down at the lake, and I'm like, I hope those guys aren't gonna, because they were a little bit ahead. We were waiting for a snowboarder. And I hope those guys aren't gonna go up onto the lake, because I'm definitely not going across that now. And Christian's like, oh yeah, no way. And sure enough, they ended up on the lake. And this is the scene that transpired pretty soon. And I'm like, where are you guys going? And they're like, you guys should come back. And they, the first two didn't get wet, but the third person tried to go across and broke the edge of the ice out and ended up going in. So now her boots are filled with water. And into the water, trying to help the and I'm just like, I would not do that if I were you, realizing that I'm not guiding really, but I'm still like the guide. And so I was like, I would not do that if I were you. And I explained to him that oh, cool. So he's like, the other side, you get to the trail over there, but it might be melted out on the edge. So you might as well just come out here. He's like, all right, well, I think I'm going to do that. I'm going to go to the edge. I was like, well, you're not going to gain much. You could just go around the other side of the lake like we are. And he's like, well, I just, he didn't want to get wet. So he decided to go for it. I was like, wait. Before you go, do you know what to do if you fall in ice? And I think it had that effect. He headed for the right side. He saw open water. He hung a hard left and tried to send it. And as soon as he got to that line, basically like a few hundred yards out there, he went in up to his armpits. This rest. We make a plan about this, and then one of the guys who was there, the guy in the red in this picture, said, all right, well, I'm just going to get up on the white ice and I'll just go see if I can make my verbal contact with him. Okay, that sounds good. That's a good plan, but just don't fall in. We can't have two people fall in here, so stay away. And I was like, check him out. We don't have to panic. He's doing exactly what I told him to do. He's calm. He turned around. He went back to where he came from. He's stabbing his poles into the ice. He's pulling himself up. He finally takes him about 10 minutes, but he got himself out, crawled onto the ice like I taught him. And skis, they're at the bottom of the lake still. And luckily, maybe that was good that he could pop them off. And they both came back to the shore with one of the other person's skis pulling on one leg. And the first thing he said when he got back to me was, I should have listened to the guide. So it reminds me of how we tend to manage uncertainty. And over the years, I've come up with 4 good strategies. One is your uncertainty. To realize we can never gather all the information that we need, but gathering more is one important way to manage uncertainty. Another is to create and maintain options. So when you're uncertain, ask yourself, what are my options and how can I keep them in my plan as long as possible? Like if I don't like it, we can always do plan B or C, right? And so can we keep our options, or are we creating an uncertain plan where everything really hinges on it going the way we want it to, right? Can we build in a margin for error? Margin for error is the space to be fallible. We all are. It doesn't matter what level you are at any of this. We did this in this Alaskan ski tour where we came upon a persistent weak layer about 40 centimeters down in the snowpack. We radioed it down to another group who had decided to sleep in. This was an east-facing slope, and we knew it would build in more of a margin of safety to go earlier before the sun hit it, because rapid warming often makes these weak layers more sensitive to triggering. And once we found it present there, we changed our terrain plan. So we had a plan that could really accommodate lower angle terrain as well to manage that uncertainty. And on our way down, this is an example of where we skied. You can see we chose the lowest angle slopes. We avoided the steep slopes as best we can. We skied one at a time. And these were ways we built in a margin for error in our plan. The other group, they got up after we were down. They went up in the sun. They didn't have a line with as many options. They ended up on a little bit of a steeper pitch that was really baking hard in the sun with rapid warming. And one of them triggered an avalanche, carried a short way and escaped it. But it was a great stark lesson and a really good opportunity to see like, oh, these are the decisions we made. And here's another group who made a different set of decisions with a different outcome. And you can compare and contrast. So one way we can learn. And then whenever I'm uncertain, use your team. The power of your team is incredibly strong. We're so filled with bias and our perspectives are so skewed that we can use each other by communicating. So whenever I'm uncertain, I communicate more. I can sometimes, it's like verbal diarrhea. I'm talking and listening to each other, debating things. Try to create a culture where you can do that within your group. So to create a good team, right now. Everyone has a voice and everyone has a veto, creating a dynamic in your group where, is everyone okay with this? Is anybody not okay with this? And have that be okay for them to say, you know what? I just want to veto this right now. Okay, no problem. Let's do something else. Assess the uncertainties that are out there and challenge people's assumptions. Sometimes people don't want to be confrontational. But if we can challenge each other's assumptions, we can be safer. It could be the difference between making a good decision and making one that results in the loss of somebody. So don't be afraid to speak your mind and challenge other people and make it something that's welcome in your group. M is for meet to debrief the day's decisions, because a good team can make better decisions over time. And we came back later in the day, our last run of the day, we skied down to the ocean and we looked up and we saw this avalanche. And it was pretty fresh, you could see. saw that that has to be an old. Um, up towards the summit. This is close to the summit for those of you who climb Mount Tom. And one of the travel techniques we use is like just easing into the slope. This was not a place we wanted to have a mishap. And not being a little bit uncertain about the conditions, we wanted to ease into the slope and ski it very conservative. So I just wanted to show you what that looks like. It's not like skiing in the movies. This is like serious skiing that we don't want to get hurt here. just kind of controlling every turn and being really careful. And later, you know, we were able to, it softened up a bit. The angle just dropped off a few degrees and we were able to just open it up and really have fun. So when I'm out there, like the mentality I'm having is a controlled fun. It's a lot different than what we do at the ski area, where it's just kind of like unbridled fun. This is more bridled, more controlled with, all right, let's ski for transport right now. Let's ski for safety right now. All right, let's just have fun now, right? And really control that. But this is a beautiful place. I really recommend checking it out one day if you can. Even if you just do one of these lines, it's just outstanding. And this is crossing into Elderberry Canyon. And then there's the other link up ramp that gets you to the North Ridge. So then that's a place where we were nervous that it would get too warm, and that's why we started so early. But luckily you can see our ski penetration isn't too much and it wasn't too warm. And we ended up getting up to the ridge early, which is how we like it. But we had to wait for the sun to come around to the westerly slopes to be able to ski good snow and not have it be ice on the northwest side. And as we were there, I had a chance to contemplate the fact that I hadn't been to Elderberry Canyon in many, many years, because my good friend Will Krajenko died there in an avalanche. And that was the last time I was there. This is a picture of Will. This is the avalanche he was caught in. If you look very carefully, you can maybe make out a fracture line in the terrain. You can also see a picture of him on that day with his group. They had a couple other Bishop locals and some visitors from Montana. They saw a lot of signs, red flags, like a lot of wind loading that had happened recently, some other avalanches that had occurred, and even two WUMPs, which are, anyone ever felt that? It's a collapse of the snowpack, it's a fracture in the snowpack that travels through the snowpack. And it's basically an avalanche, but there's not enough slope angle. A lot of times a WUMP will be accompanied by an avalanche in steeper terrain, but this, where they got the WUMP was not as steep, but it's a sign of an unstable snowpack. So they kept going, and you can see the avalanche in this picture, just to the left of that circle. And here's the avalanche that occurred, and Johnny took some big turns down the middle, just these big jump turns, kind of through some breakable crust conditions. And once he did that, everyone got this feeling of, oh, well, he just like hammered the slope. So if it was going to go, it would have already gone. And then people started to mobilize all together. And two people got caught in a giant avalanche that funneled into a terrain trap, folded the snow, and buried them under 2 and 3 meters of snow. And two people died, including my good friend Will and my ski partner Will. He was a really prolific skier of the Eastern Sierra back in those days. Mark, Bob, and Darla were still up on top in the rescue efforts as they tried to rush down and help their friends. They created another avalanche that nearly buried Mark, nearly caught Bob. He managed to self-arrest, and did catch Darla enough to break her leg. And so now we had somebody with a broken leg on the rescue team as well. But they did manage to get everybody evacuated with their rescue skills. They were quite practiced at it, and they did it quite fast considering the burial depth, but it was too late, and they had to evacuate themselves with somebody with a broken leg after that. So I hadn't been back since actually just before, a month before, by coincidence, I was doing a guide training with this fellow, and we skied the exact same line as part of this day. And a month later, my friend Will skied that line and was killed. And so here I am sitting on that same ridge, just looking down. This is from the helicopter, looking down actually at the site that they were going to go pick up the bodies. We're right there, and this is us sitting up there looking down at the same spot and just contemplating that and being so grateful to have gone through the process we had, and to have the communication between two partners that we had that day that got us to this point where we were there early having managed our risk well and our uncertainty, to start our descent. This was the descent that we were about to start, getting down to Pine Creek. And part of my gathering information and to manage my uncertainty was in the week prior, I had the opportunity to guide some folks, actually. We went from Rock Creek to Pine Creek over Mount Morgan and had a great day. And this is a picture that I took from that day. So I got to really see the snow coverage and really familiarize myself with conditions before I got there. That was one way I could manage the uncertainty of what we were about to do. And when we skied it, it was perfect. It was perfect top to bottom. And we just had an amazing long ski descent in a really impressive place that I think is on a world-class stage. I've been skiing a lot of places, and where we live here in the Eastern Sierra is among the best. And then eventually down to the desert, through some avalanche debris at the end, some really dirty avalanche debris from heat and mud, and then out to the road. So to get to that point, learn about avalanches, learn and practice avalanche rescue, take an avalanche course, continue your avalanche education, hire a guide, find a mentor out there. It's a long process. It's a lifelong learning process. But in courses, we learn where, when, and how different types of avalanches occur, to use an effective decision-making framework as a team, how to reduce risk in and around avalanche terrain, rescue skills for our companions if they get buried in an avalanche, and how our actions impact our safety and that of other backcountry users. So if you haven't taken a course, take one. If you have, continue your training. Celebrate your safe returns from the mountains. And this is us doing that. This is a friend of mine who died more recently on Mount Humphreys. You might have heard about somebody who fell on a snow couloir. And this is my friend Ray Warburton celebrating a backcountry ski day we had in the Alps. But that day he did not safely return. The mountains are risky, and we do face them every day we go out. So back to Ben Franklin on life and death. He says, life's tragedy is we get old too soon and wise too late. And on paying taxes, he says, he that is of the opinion money will do everything may well be expected of doing everything for money. And then maybe there's some other things in life to think about too. So I hope you'll be well on your journey. Thanks, you guys. Happy to answer any questions you might have. Hope this kind of got your brain going, thinking about how you're going to manage your risk and uncertainty this avalanche season.